We are the group that did the movie Sherman's March, directed by Ross McLeod. And I'm going to talk about the narrative and the modes of Sherman's March. So in the beginning, it talks about how Ross is following the story of William Sherman, who was an officer from the North during the Civil War. Sherman went through the southern states and left a path of destruction, forcing a southern defeat in North Carolina, and that's where the director is from. It was the first time total warfare unleashed on a civilian population. And the big theme is that the director kept having dreams of nuclear war and was attracted towards it. And he even talked about on his birthday how he and his family saw the hydrogen bomb and it created like a happiness mood for him, which is kind of weird because usually dreams of nuclear bombs don't create happiness. Then his girlfriend left him, and this pushes him to start filming once she leaves him. He feels like the camera helps him interact with other women and helps the audience feel the same way because you're seeing it from the camera. Ross states that he's devouring himself with the camera, which represents his struggle to film or to be in a relationship. And according to the New York Times, he's picking up new girlfriends or trying to find old ones, but most of the time the old ones are in a relationship. On the other hand, the narrative uses humor and irony, while with interesting characters such as his sister. In addition, the New York Times states that the film is self-searching, meaning he's searching for a purpose in his life. And then he meets Pat and has a attraction towards her. He even films her when she was working out. And yeah, so that was a weird scene. Then he moves to Atlanta with her, but then she leaves him for an acting job. And this makes him really depressed and makes him not want to film for a little bit. He even locks himself in his hotel room for I think about a couple days. And again, he's having dreams of hydrogen bombs tests, and this makes him feel better depending on his love life and how he's doing in that. And as I said before, major theme is the threat of nuclear war and how people are prepared for it. And there's this one scene where he goes to people in the mountains and they have bunkers that are underground. And it's there's this one scene where they kind of embrace it and they're ready for it. So they don't look at it as a bad thing. They kind of look at it like it'd be a new world. So they kind of embrace it a little bit. And then another theme is that people in the South still hold on to their values and believe in them. So like they still believe they should have won the Civil War. That's one thing. And I got this from an article. The movie is a meditation on the romantic love in the South today. Like a big theme is that people in the South still have a pride for being in the South. And Ross is having a hard time deciding if he should stay with a new girlfriend or follow the Sherman story. So that's another theme. And he looked up to Sherman and was interested in his love for the South, even though he attacked the South, because Sherman liked the South, but the irony is that he was ordered to destroy it and attack it. And there's this one scene where he's talking to a camera head on, and it's a front person point of view. And Sherman is more remembered in the South than the North. Okay, write this up. And now I'm going to talk about the modes of Sherman's March. He uses performative mode because he's always interacting with the women and impacts their life. For example, when he leaves Winnie, and this brings her closer together with their other friend. Another mode that is used in the film is exploratory, During the film, he will often speak in a first-person point of view, directly speaking to the viewer. Directly speaking to a viewer about Sherman, and also when he's having family dinner with his family, it's just on the three of them. And another theme is that he starts seeking similarities between himself and Sherman. So he's always talking about how he's similar to Sherman, about his clothes, his outfit, his dress style. And this creates a relationship between the viewer and the director. And there's another scene where he's talking to one of his girlfriends, but then the camera stops working, and he's narrating over it. And he has the ability to be serious, funny, and personal in this film. For example, when he's talking on his views about Sherman, he's really serious about it. But when he's filming, like, his girlfriend working out, or there's a scene where the people are messing with 3D glasses for the first time. It's kind of a funny scene, so that was interesting. And that's the narrative and notes, and now I'm gonna leave it over to Patty. Thank you.
I'm gonna talk about the subject matter and more of like towards the end of the film, because at this point it becomes more of a film, kind of a relationship of love and the alienation of the nuclear age, and you get a real sense of what the 80s were like, but somehow he always finds a way to relate it back to Sherman's March. At this point he meets Winnie, and Winnie lives on an island, on a small island just with one other person. He went to this island because Sherman had, it's in Savannah, and Sherman had stopped in the island for a short moment, so he wanted to film on the island. You have to get permission to go onto the island. Once he does this, he moves in with Winnie, and has a relationship with her. And she was a linguistic professor. And then while he's on the island, he tells her about his film, more of like Sherman's March. And then the narrative spine kind of switches more of like his interaction with these women, and a small undertone of like, I'm going to these places because Sherman stopped by or had done something to impact those areas. He has to leave Winnie for money reasons. So Winnie ends up in a relationship with the only other person on the island, which is Michael. And when he returns, he's stuck on the island with both of them, and it becomes this weird little triangle. And he becomes friends with Michael, even though he had a relationship with Winnie. And then while he's on the island, he has more dreams of the nuclear war. He leaves and he goes on to a place where they were rebuilding a monument that Sherman had destroyed. And then in this area is in South Carolina, and he just happens that one of his ex-girlfriend lives in that area as well. So he decides to go visit her. She's a teacher she's an art teacher in a school, and at this point he shows you get a sense of their relationship and that he wants more, but finds out that she has a boyfriend who's a paralegal for nuclear reactors, which is kind of ironic because of his dreams. And they go see a monument, which is about nuclear war, and it's a big stone that shows how to start civilization in different languages. And it's a very romantic yet morbid feel to it, kind of like him and his ex-girlfriend are in this sense of like Adam and Eve, and there's like, this is how you start a civilization. Now, after that, he leaves because she's moving to California. He goes to see one of his former teachers and friends, which is Charlene. So this is an image of like what the stone looked like. Charlene is a very interesting character because unlike most of the women that he had met before in the film, she's very blunt, she's direct, and you get a sense of what the South was like through her because she has the mentality of like, she told him that you're too old to be failing at trying, and she related this to the fact that he's 30 and single. And so she tries to hook him up with this woman named Dee Dee and keeps saying like she's perfect for you. So because he keeps pushing it on him, it becomes this awkward experience for both of them. And he starts filming their interaction, which makes Charlene angry and tells him, this is art. Says, this isn't art, it's life. Which Ross replies, well, I'm filming my life so I can have a life. And then Charlene, once he tells Charlene that Dee Dee is a Mormon and wants to bring a priesthood into her home so she won't marry anyone who isn't a Mormon, Charlene tells him, well, if you made her fall in love with you, she would leave her religion. Which is interesting because Dee Dee is also a professor in an all-girls school in the South. So you get a sense of like, they're kind of breeding these women that you get a sense of it doesn't matter who you're with as long as you're with someone, and that's what Charlene's goal is for Ross. And Dee Dee's also her and her family are building a fallout shelter, so you get more of a sense of like they're living in a nuclear age, and this is typical for most families. He meets another woman named Joy, who's a singer in the parking lot, and then he tracks down one of his other ex-girlfriends in the South while he's there, named Karen. And at the time, Karen is single, and he tries to force this idea upon her to kind of love him. And she tells him, you're going about this the wrong way. So she ends up going back to her ex-boyfriend. And then he ends up leaving the town with nothing. Like his car broke down. He's kind of at the point where he realizes that he was trying to convince Karen to love him. And that's not how you go about a relationship. And then it finally hits him that you can't find the perfect person to fall in love with. So he decides to kind of give up on it and just move away from that and just focus on himself. So he takes a couple classes and he ends up in the North, which is, he describes how Sherman died of pneumonia. And then he ends up taking a music class, and has a crush on one of his professor, and kind of goes to one of her concerts, and finally builds up the courage to ask her out to a movie. And that's where the movie ends. We don't find out whether she said yes or no, but more like he's still trying to have, like, even if he left behind the notion of like you can't find the perfect person, he still wants to be in a relationship. And then there's also an interesting scene, which is Ross describing this monument, which I feel like this scene kind of describes the whole movie in a whole, because his intent is to follow Sherman's journey. And this monument is a monument that Sherman had destroyed, but yet he's filming it and he's saying he came here, destroyed it, and then left, which mirrors kind of Ross's relationship with these women, because he goes to visit them, he leaves kind of brokenhearted and then a lot of missed opportunities, which kind of mirrors, because he always compares himself to Sherman, like, yes, I have the same beard, but on the undertone, like, he went to these places, he visited these women, and he kind of tried but failed at it and then just kept going, just like Sherman did. Which I'll move on. Well, to talk about cinematography.
So next we're going to talk about the cinematography of the film. I'm more specifically going to be talking about the editing and composition. For the most part, Sherman's March is shot and edited in very much a cinema verte type of style, very natural. He uses a lot of long takes, which, according to collegefilmandmediastudies.com, describes them as shots that extend for a long period of time before cutting to the next shot, which a lot of the scenes do, mostly when he's talking to one of the many women or people in the film. This technique of long takes helps to get the audience's attention and keep it without sort of distracting them with a lot of cuts and takes. And yet again, a lot of this is due to the fact that a lot of the film is him talking to and interacting with these people, so you want it to mainly focus on that aspect. It also affects how the film is shot. Because of this, you sort of see it through his eyes, so you get a lot of zoom ins and outs. Like if he were to focus on something, he focuses it, like, the best way to describe it is like if there's a mid shot throughout most of the conversation and he zooms into a close-up, it's him focusing in on that person and that conversation and what they're saying. To help demonstrate this, if I can get the mouse working. Okay, to help demonstrate this, here's a clip, short section of the film that I feel helps demonstrate.
I think I've weighed that a little since I was in the third grade. Tell me about the dress.
You can see it's a lot of one take, him focusing particularly on the woman with the dress right there, who they're having the conversation about. And it's very natural dialogue, very natural sound. Okay. And yet again, the composition of the film usually helps to focus the attention on what the filmmaker's focusing on. Okay. And also leading to the cinema verte feel of the film is also the composition, along with sort of the handheld nature of the film, helping it yet again to show that it's through his eyes, his perspective. He does break this up sometimes, mostly when he has a overlapping narrative or it's a shot of him by himself. The camera would normally be on a tripod focusing in not so much on him, but this breaks away from the cinema verte, so he can sort of almost have a conversation with the viewer about his thoughts. Also, he doesn't always, I guess, let me rephrase that. He also tries to mix up the composition too when he's not directly interacting with the people. Like this still is from a shot where I believe it's two of the first women he meets who they're getting ready for an outing, and she's doing her makeup, but you can see he's using the mirror to keep the focus on her face without actually being in front of her, and I just thought that was a really cool shot. And again, most of the times when he breaks this up is when he's filming himself. Probably the best example of this is in the beginning of the film, where the composition is very much a wide shot, almost an establishing shot sometimes. And he's very, very small in the frame. This is when he's talking about mostly his girlfriend leaving him and about not really knowing what to do with the film now. This helps convey sort of the loneliness and I guess the smallness he's feeling because of that. In conclusion, basically the film, the way it's edited and shot is to better show what he's seeing through the world and helps the viewer get his perspective on what's going on in the film.
My name's Allison. I'm going to be talking about lighting, sound, and color. When the film first starts, it starts off with static images because it starts off like a documentary kind of feel, like he's going to be doing Sherman's March, so he shows static shots of the actual route that he took. And they're all in black and white, and it shows like there was a hidden history. And as the first scene is also in black and white when he's talking about his original idea, and this shows like how his intentions were to start off actually going through the route. And then after the first shot, it switches to color, and this shows how the film is now changing to this new story where he's trying to find love instead of actually going through Sherman's March. This all happened again because his girlfriend left him and it changed what he was actually doing, and he kind of used Sherman's March as an excuse to find love, and the color helps represent that. The film has very distinct home video look and feel to it. This is used to like soft lighting and a lot of like blue and green tones, and the outdoor scenes has a very natural feeling to it, and it's very organic. These are examples of soft lighting, which means low contrast, and that adds to the style and it creates a soft feel to it. Low contrast creates a wide range of colors and appears soft to the eye. He also uses low contrast lighting. Low contrast adds to the style and creates a softness, and this means there's a wide range of colors instead of just like solid black and white, so there's many variations. High key lighting makes an overall brighter picture, and this is used when he's like filming his love interest because it makes like an upbeat, fun feeling. And he also uses it when he's outside. But in contrast, uses low key lighting when he's doing scenes by himself because he has a lot more like dark thoughts, and it shows like how alone he feels when he's by himself because he doesn't have this love, like he hasn't found the right woman yet. So when he's just talking to the camera, he uses a lot more dark lighting. And the way he narrates also adds to the film. He uses like a very comic voice styling. And the New York Times said, Mr. McLeod, whose dry vocal delivery and occasionally seen deadpan face are very much a part of his exceptionally comic filmmaking personality. Just the way he kind of like talked, added a comedy to it, and you kind of almost felt bad for him because he couldn't find this love and he kept messing up like every situation he went into. That's just how it works.